In my long and ongoing campaign to demonstrate to you the glory of the Soviet gunboat destroyers, I present to you yet another exhibit in the legendary tier Soviet destroyer Khabarovsk, which is much more of a cruiser than it is a destroyer. This is going to be an epic carry on our part, over 3,000 base XP. We've got a fellow community contributor on our team. It is, of course, Tbull in the Alaska. He's somewhere on the other side of the map. And the reason I got into this game is because Tbull was doing a stream the other day, and he decided to actually do some count-ins, which allowed the majority of the chat to get into the same games as him. And count-ins are something I like to do from time to time on my own stream. I think they can have a really, really good benefit, which is that if somebody is watching a stream on YouTube or Twitch or whatever for World of Warships Legends, then that means they're probably, just by the process of self-selection, better than the average player. Why? Well, because they're looking outside of the game for information on how to play it and how to get better. So anytime a streamer can do a count-in on a stream and guarantee that some of his teammates or some of the enemy teammates are composed of members of the stream chat, well, that can make for closer and more competitive games, and I think that is exactly what happened here. It just turns out that I am going to pull off a carry in the face of some pretty overwhelming odds. Note that on this flank of the map, we only have a friendly Alaska pushing up with us. That Alaska is not Tbull, but a separate Alaska. He's right over here to the right of our ship. We don't quite see him, but we've also got a gearing smoked up in front of us. Now, the way I build the Khabarovsk, as I'm sure you all know, is I put Anton Gurin on there. And I have Anton Gurin at rank 16, legendary level 4, which means I have his 4th row of skills fully maxed, and thus I have the sidestep skill fully maxed, which gives me an extra 10% range on the main guns. Couple that with Rumble as an inspiration, and potentially the epic booster of battle propensity flag, you got 15.4 km range. It might only be 14.9 km range in this game, because I'm not running the flag, but even so, very, very far range. At the same time, the trade-off for this kind of build is I have no concealment whatsoever, 6.9 kilometers by sea, and that means the gearing out there, who I'm harassing as he kites away, is able to outspot me pretty much every time. And that is a significant downside if you find yourself facing a particularly skilled destroyer opponent, but the fact that the Khabarovsk's concealment is so poor with this build often leads destroyers on the red team into making mistakes when the Khabarovsk is spotted. And by mistakes, I mean they shoot at the Khabarovsk, as that gearing did. Now, obviously, he smoked up, but the Alaska radared him and he was forced to retreat. The Alaska, for his part, is making a mistake of his own, getting caught bow in against this Yamato, which is absolutely not a virtue in that particular legendary tier cruiser. It does not have enough armor to tank a Yamato, or most battleships for the most part. I don't think you really want to get caught bow in that ship ever, because if you do, especially against a Yamato, well, that kind of thing can happen, and just like that, I'm completely out of friends on the flank. Tbull's all the way over by the Charlie cap with the remaining 2 enemy destroyers, so it's sort of up to me to hold off the enemy push across this flank. They could easily push into the Bravo cap and take that, and potentially, if these 2 Yamatos that are on this flank position themselves correctly, they could have broadside shots on my team over near Charlie. So I want to stick around here. This enemy Yamato is giving me broadside, so I've switched to the AP. He's kind of far away, so the penetration is not especially spectacular, but I think the AP is still getting more consistent damage and higher damage than the high explosive would in this situation, so I'm going to keep shooting it, despite the fact that not all of the shells are penetrating. At closer ranges than this, the Khabarovsk's AP is phenomenal, and you'll see that a little bit later, again versus this same Yamato, I think. Meanwhile, the other Yamato is moving in. You can see he's firing at me to no avail. When the Khabarovsk is this far away from battleships, well, there's really no hope for those battleships of hitting the Khabarovsk unless it beaches itself on an island like a complete potato. Luckily, these ships are still too far away that they really can't make contact with us, and this Yamato is about to put himself behind an island, so our harassment of him has to come to an end. Note the RPF indicator is pointing slightly in front of this final enemy Yamato over here, and that is because the gearing is moving into the Bravo cap. You can see it starting to turn red right now. And you might say, well, I'm not essentially playing the role of a destroyer in this game by allowing that Bravo cap to start to turn red. Obviously, that is the gearing. Perhaps, Xarkun, you should consider building for concealment on your Khabarovsk so that you can counter enemy destroyers more easily. But to that I say the Khabarovsk is huge and rather clumsy, if not incredibly fast. So you really don't want to get into close-range knife fights with destroyers if you can help it. You want to hit them at range. But this gearing, well, he's sitting square inside the Bravo cap. He's smoked up. We can't see him. But at the same time, he can't see us. Smoke screens work both ways. So we're going to hold our fire for the moment, even though we could shoot at this Yamato. And we are going to use our incredible speed to barrel in toward this smoke screen and hopefully catch this gearing by surprise. If he's just sitting there, well, that is going to spell death for him, and we want to come in at a little bit of an angle so as to be sure he can't really torpedo us. Turns out he's leaving the smoke screen. He doesn't actually want to stay there. And he does momentarily go dark, causing our shells to completely miss, but he opens fire again, which allows him to be spotted, and he's completely stationary, not moving at all, so he's really not a terribly difficult target to take out. Meanwhile, the Yamato here and the Yamato over there have me in a crossfire, so one of them's got to go. This Yamato takes the opportunity to get a shot with, I think that was high explosives, so good for him, but mostly it misses because we slow down. And here you can see the Khabarovsk's AP doing its magic at a much closer range. About a 5k, 3k salvo every time we hit that Yamato's broadside. And yeah, he really doesn't have any health left. He's got to take himself behind that island. Taking himself behind that island, of course, means he can't shoot again at us, so we'll turn our attention over here to this Yamato, who is threatening to get into a position where he might have broadsides on my teammates over there. We don't want to allow that to happen, and we should be able to whittle him down quite quickly with our armor piercing. Some of our teammates are shooting at him in return, too, which is good. They end up securing the kill, which is honestly just fine with me. Now, the enemy Yamato over there behind that island, he's our primary concern. The rest of the enemy team is over on the Charlie side of the map. So what we're going to do is we're going to point our nose toward Alpha. The enemy team is ahead of us on points, and they are still accruing points from holding on to that red Alpha cap. We would like to stop that. We'd like to turn it blue because the enemy team has been ahead of us on points for this entire game, and I think at this point Tbull has been dispatched, so it's really up to me to carry this game, and that is what I intend to do. Now, I left that Yamato on very, very low health with my armor piercing. Just need to be sure that he can be spotted again, and I need a little bit of clearance over this island in order to get some shots on him. So as soon as we move into this Alpha cap, we're hopefully going to be able to spot him again, and we'll be able to take him out quite quickly. But note, an enemy Alaska is actually moving toward our position, which is not good. That's going to mess up my plans for this cap, I think, but not my plans to demolish the enemy Yamato. He goes down as our second kill of the game. And there is the Alaska, definitely moving into this cap. I think this Alaska was also in Tbull's chat, so that means he's not a player to be trifled with. He has to be respected. If you're in Tbull's stream chat, then you probably know a thing or two about this game, and we are sailing within radar range of this Alaska. Looks like he's holding his radar. He doesn't want to deploy it just yet until he's sure he's going to catch us, but we do want to secure this cap. We are about 10 seconds away from having it under the control of the blue team, so we slow down to acquire the final capture points and finally flip the cap to blue. And now the enemy team has no caps, no source of points whatever, except for sinking ships. So now we just need to avoid getting sunk. The Alaska does radar us, but after we've taken the cap, which is fantastic because he cannot stop us now. What he can do is push into the cap. Now, I've left some torpedoes in his path, but I didn't really take much time to aim them properly, so he's going to sail completely around them. And the Alaska, unlike other American cruisers, does not suffer from the same floaty shell arcs. No, the Alaska has much better ballistics that allow it to aim its shells much more easily at range, so I have to be much further from the Alaska than I would something like a Des Moines or Worcester, which even at 9-10 kilometers would probably struggle to hit the Khabarovsk with their shells. But the Alaska has no such problem, and as you can see, he's been hitting me. His aim is pretty good, so I really can't afford to take too many more hits from him. The game is still fairly close in terms of ship count. There are 3 reds versus 4 blues. Somehow all of the blue destroyers have managed to survive, which is a rare enough thing, and again, I think that is the product of doing the count-ins. But the Alaska is getting very close to flipping the Bravo cap, or rather the Alpha cap. We do not want to allow him to do that, so we are going to take a chance and take a couple of pot shots just to reset him. Of course, he returns fire immediately, and he does manage to take out our steering gears yet again, but only 1 shell hits, so that's good. And as we continue to fire at this Alaska, note that he's drawing ever closer to the border of the cap circle, and this is exactly what we want. If we can get this Alaska to continue chasing us outside of the cap circle and stop capping it, well, we're going to start accruing points from it again, and that is essentially going to guarantee our win. Meanwhile, there's only 1 enemy destroyer left alive aside from this Alaska, so things are looking pretty wrapped up. We just need to essentially stay alive and get this Alaska out of the Alpha cap. And that's exactly what he does. He sails straight out of the Alpha cap, he's no longer contesting it, and our work here is done. We really don't need to shoot at him again. That was our only goal. Now, he does get a nasty hit on us there, lighting a fire, disabling like all of our modules, but we've got the damage control ready to go, and we're able to keep ourselves alive with 3,600 more hit points than we really need. The Alpha cap is turning red again. That indicates the final enemy destroyer is now in there, but there are about to be less than 2 minutes left to go on the game timer, and even if the last enemy destroyer does flip that Alpha cap, we should pretty much have this game in the bag. And we've done about 120,000 damage with the Khabarovsk, which is certainly not a hugely impressive amount of damage, to be sure, but our XP is going to be excellent, due in large part to our solo capping that Alpha cap earlier on, and absolutely demolishing the enemy gearing. That is worth a lot in terms of battle impact, and that is going to be reflected on the leaderboard. The final remaining friendly battleship takes out the Alaska, and that just leaves the last enemy destroyer, which by the looks of it is probably a Shimakaze. We can see his 3 sets of torpedoes heading for our last battleship teammate. Don't know if they're going to end up taking that guy out, but even if they do, it does not matter. The points lead that the blue team now enjoys is completely insurmountable, thanks in large part to me taking the Alpha cap, and thanks in large part to my teammates taking Charlie. Although I think if I hadn't remained on the Alpha Bravo flank for the entirety of this game, things might have gone very differently. Turns out the Khabarovsk is a very carry-capable ship, as I have always known, and as I think you see demonstrated here. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will, of course, see you next time. Goodbye.